of the last election, do you expect the opposition in the Boise swamp to be stronger or weaker? Now let me temper the question. Do you expect going back to session to be able to get things done? Anybody?
Absolutely.
And
yeah. How? We are in a way better spot. I've been down there for 10 years. This next coming term, we will have more conservatives than we've ever had in the last 10 years. We've had a huge shift. A lot of Eastern Idaho, they're like globalist rhinos. I don't know what you want to call them. They're just big government people. A lot of those people that voted against, for transitioning kids and some really, they got beaten. They got beaten. We've got new people in there. We have the numbers now. We probably have the numbers to flip and get leadership in the Senate, and we have a majority of conservatives in the House. So that makes all the difference. It's a numbers game ultimately down there. You have to have the numbers to get something passed. And there's always those middle people, and they'll swing with you when you get the momentum. And I think we have the momentum. We have 4 years to work from the bottom up to help as Trump works from the top down to clean up our country. And that's what I'm there to do.
Well, so Heather says she's been there 10 years, and that's been her mantra all along, as has been mine for 14. I told one meeting, you should have fired me a long time ago. I didn't slow down the budget, and I didn't, limit the growth of government. But the fight continues, and we do have an excellent, excellent opportunity. And again, in the areas I'm talking about, if we can just grab a hold of the control of the review of those rules, a lot could change. And isn't that what Trump's talking about doing? If he could eliminate some of those regulations, indeed, I don't know how you get rid of some of these various agencies and stuff like that, but within the state, if we can get control of the NGOs and we can get control of the rules, we'll have a chance to reflect that conservative perspective, and that, again, is where the rubber meets the road. Those agencies and those rules affect you directly, depending on what you're trying to do.
Well, there's good news and bad news, as is usually the case. When I first started 6 years ago, we had 14 Democrats in the House of Representatives, exactly 80% Republicans. The same situation existed in the Senate. They had 7 Democrats, so 80% Republican. 2 years ago, we whittled the 14 in the House down to 11. This time we've whittled it down to 9. So we are becoming more of a supermajority. That's the good news. Now, I don't want to disparage Democrats because there's an increasing number of so-called Republicans that vote with the Democrats. Let me tell you some statistical information on that. There's a group called the Institute for Legislative Analysis. They have analyzed every legislature in the United States, all 50 states. They've done that for here in Idaho. They selected, this is a year ago, they selected a number of bills and rated legislators, both in the House and Senate, specifically here in Idaho that I'm speaking about, as far as whether those are good constitutional moral bills. Now, if you got a 50% or higher score on those bills, they're sample bills, and this is after the fact, so you can't look at the test key and determine how you want to vote to get an R or a D behind your name. If you got 50% or higher, you were considered philosophically a Republican. If you got less than 50%, you were considered philosophically a Democrat. The Senate is philosophically overwhelmingly Democrat. Now, that may shock some of you. The House is 3 to 5 members on the conservative side. Now, that was before this last election. We've made some strides, so I think we've got a good, solid conservative majority. But that's at a 50% level. Now, when I went to school, you got a 50% on a test. That was a flunking grade, so that's a very liberal measure. So don't think that our legislature is, just because we have 85% or 87% Republicans, that it is an overwhelmingly conservative legislature. That's not the case.
We have time for 2 more comments. Anybody else want to speak on this palate cleanser?
Yeah, just briefly, last week we had the legislative tour of North Idaho where legislators came here and looked at local commerce and things of that nature, and it was finished by the governor addressing legislators and others at a dinner. And listening to the governor, it sounded as though he was applying for a job in the Trump administration, which shows that he knows which way the wind is blowing, and I think it indicates a seismic shift in what's happened here in Idaho.
So, Dale or Doug, do you guys want to give the last comment on this topic?
I would just mention that I agree with Heather. I think we're poised to do very well, and I'll say that because we did very well the last 2 years without the national government at our back. So I can't help think that this will just accelerate what we got done. There's some people out there that want to say, oh, this was the worst legislative session ever. We protected children from transgender surgeries. We protected them from the medications. We stopped the funding from the state in any of that. We protected election integrity. We had the library bill. There are dozens of bills that were very good for Idaho over the last 2 years. So I think that we can step on the gas and go forward.
Yeah, we're running really, really short on time, and I want to make sure